Hello and welcome back to the Hoof Football Podcast. This week I'm joined once again by Charlie. It's the double duo as usual. And this week we're going to have an interesting little debate. The debate is, can we create the worst possible top six currently in the Premier League 11? So debating on what the worst means, it's kind of players that we think are just ultimately rubbish, as well as players that have really struggled and performed very kind of poorly this season. But it's up to debate what kind of you interpret worst as. But yeah, we're going to create a worst 11 from the big six because too often you always see the best 11s. We thought we'd switch it up this week. So we'll start with you, Charlie. Well, obviously, it is only you. Um, obviously, has your weekend been and how's your week going?
Weekend was it could have been better when watching Hull City. They lost 3-1 against Millwall despite being a better team. They did play last night, beat Wrexham, which
That's a good one.
obviously we can relate to since Chelsea did beat them on the weekend.
Only
But
just.
yeah, it was a very close game. But yeah, I think one thing which really struck my eye was definitely last night in terms of the Champions League. I mean, Tottenham had a complete tragedy. They had to replace the goalkeeper. Was it in the 17th minute, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah, the 17th minute, Kinski got subbed off and then was seen in tears on the sidelines. And then obviously the rest unfolded where I think they were 4 nil down by, no, yeah, 4 nil down by about the 20th minute. And then they scored one in the
Yeah.
25th minute.
Yeah, it was brutal for him. I've seen a lot of people say it was a controversial decision to take him off. I don't know what really most people would think of that, but yeah, I was happy that Galatasaray beat Liverpool as well. My dark horses are looking good, and I
Yeah.
don't think Joe will be very happy after Newcastle bottled their 1-0 win against Barca since
Yeah, the
Lamine Yamal scored a
response,
late penalty.
no, the response when I saw, like, because I watched the last 10 minutes of the game after I got in from work. And when Newcastle scored, obviously you thought they're going to cling on. And then it was literally the last kick of the game. And Malik Jaw with it was definitely 100% a penalty. I've never seen one more blatant. He just kicks the guy in the shin. But yeah, it looked like out in the aftermath, it felt like the morale and everything about that kind of draw was a loss basically for them, is how it felt, just because it was that last kick of the game.
Yeah, I think it's one of them things really where I don't I think Newcastle from what I saw. I mean, I didn't watch the game obviously because I was too busy watching Hull, but I realized that in the second half they looked like on like stats wise they're a much better team. So it was one of them where they were thinking probably in the heads that they deserved a win, and they're going to be kicking themselves, of course, that they've drawn that game because now going to new camp and trying to deal with Barca is going to be way harder. So I don't know. I'm a bit concerned for Newcastle for the second leg, but I don't know. We've seen many surprises in the competition before, so who knows
Well,
what will
that's what I
happen.
mean. I'm supposing that Spurs fans admit their awful season and hoping that they can turn around to that 5-2 loss to Atletico. I don't think that's going to be the case. But
No.
again, if you look at Barca famously back in the day when they scored what, six against PSG, you never know in this competition. No, my weekend, to be fair, I mean, as you've just said about Chelsea Wrexham, we made it very difficult. We didn't even play that much of a weakened team, which is what worried me a little bit. Maybe we just kind of maybe we didn't treat Wrexham with enough respect, but they definitely came with like the long ball tactic that really undid us. Garnacho, to be fair, started playing quite well. As much as I've given him a lot of criticism this season. Yeah, and then obviously, like you said, I watched a bit of the Champions League and saw some of the games unfold. Chelsea playing PSG tonight, so we'll see what can be made of that. If we're gonna, a lot of people, a lot of Chelsea fans, from what I've seen, have said that they think we're going to do all right because it's PSG have been a little bit inconsistent this season compared to
Yeah.
last season, where obviously they went and won everything in the world. So obviously we've beat them in the Club World Cup, although that is a glorified friendly tournament. But no, we'll get straight into the worst 11. So Chelsea are obviously in that. We've got the top six. So the teams that we're going to be including is Arsenal, Man City, Liverpool, Aston Villa, Chelsea, and Manchester United. And then the only rule we've got is that it's a minimum of one player per team. So as long as you've got at least one of the six teams a player in from them, then you can go for as many players as you want. We'll do it as we normally do. So we'll do goalkeeper and back line, then we'll do midfield, and then we'll do forwards. You might have a different formation to me, Charlie, because obviously I didn't really put a limit on the formations. So we'll start with your goalkeeper and then your back four.
Okay, so in goal, I mean, I feel like maybe you could really agree with me on this one. I've gone with Robert Sanchez in goal. He's just,
Okay.
he's just not, he's not really good. Like, I'm just gonna say it there, really. I think the Chelsea are kind of they have strengths in, I would say, anywhere outfield where they've got at least someone in the midfield that they can always rely on. They've got someone in the defence they can always rely on. Someone up front they can always rely on. But the goalkeeper, I think, is a very different story, and I think Sanchez is. There's been plenty of games where I feel like he should be doing better, whether he makes mistakes or potentially sometimes where he really should be saving certain chances. I just don't rate him personally. I think Chelsea need to invest in a better goalkeeper. Is what I believe.
I
Right
get, I
back,
get. No, go on.
right back.
I was just gonna
Oh,
say though. I was gonna say because obviously I'm a Chelsea fan, so a lot of people give him a lot of stick, and he definitely isn't the keeper. If you look in comparison to a lot of the other, like you say, the top six kind of keepers, he's not one of the best ones. But he has got one of the highest save percentages this season. He's also made one of the highest amount of saves. He's up there in the kind of the mix of the top five in the league. I think this season, especially at least in comparison to the other seasons, he's not been as bad. But like you say, I think overall it's a fair kind of shout to put him in there compared to the others, just because what Chelsea you'd expect we have as a keeper, he's not that kind of player at all, and we've struggled ever since. Really, I mean, Kepa wasn't great. Ever since we lost the likes of probably Edouard Mendy, obviously he won the Champions League with us, but even he wasn't great towards his second season. But yeah, we'll move to obviously right back now because I've waffled enough about Rob there.
yeah. Well, you might waffle a bit more about this one. It's not. I'm just going to tell you now. There isn't a lot of Chelsea players on here, but my right back, coincidentally, is Malo Gusto. That's a player that I just I don't seem to rate as well. Do you know what? I think I started to dislike him from when he got that red card against Nottingham Forest because it really just showed that the discipline is was just terrible from him. Like there was no need to make that stupid challenge. It's not just based on that incident as well. It's just I think from what I've seen. I mean, I know he's had a couple of goal involvements this season, but I think like even when I watched him last season, that he just didn't seem very impressive to me. I think he's one of them players where he can give something forward when Chelsea do go on the attack, but I think he's one of them fullbacks, in my opinion, where I don't think he's really that good of a defender. Um, I just don't think that it's kind of similar to like for instance, like one of Hull City's players, Ryan Giles, they always bring something on the attack. They're very like good on terms of the attacking mindset, but defensively, they're just not a very good player, and that's just what I think of Malo Gusto. I just think he at least gives something on the attack for Chelsea, but defensively, I think he's terrible now as a
No,
fullback.
no, definitely a fair shout. I think obviously we're looking at the top six, so there's quite a good kind of range of players here to choose from, and maybe he does fall short. I don't think necessarily, as we're not saying that they're a really bad player in terms of the entire league.
No, no.
Um, I do think, like you say, he definitely is weak in terms of his defensive abilities, and he did have a good season. I think under the Pochettino season, he had a good season because James was out injured, and he was really his attacking strengths were shown. But like you say, he has kind of. I think he's quieting down and not been as effective, especially last season and this season, where he's looked a little. He's just not looked that same player that maybe the potential was there when he first came to the club. And then centre backs, who have you gone for?
So centre backs, I've gone with Lenny Yoro. And I've gone with Ibrahim Konate as well, which will definitely annoy a few Liverpool fans. But the reason for Lenny Euro, I
Big take.
think,
Both of them are surprising, but
but
I
both
think the
are, yeah,
the
I think,
Canate is the biggest. Canate, you've got to do a good, what's the word? Debate here in terms of backing what you've said.
yeah, right. Well, with Lenny Euro, my whole reasoning really behind it is I think in some games he has looked very impressive, but I do believe that's because he's worked with an experienced centre half next to him. I think really he's not had a lot of experience to be placed on this Prem team. He's only what I think like is he like 20, 21, 22? I think I can't remember how
Yeah,
old he is, but
he's young. Yeah, he's young.
he is young, yeah. And I just think that there's been quite a few games when he's played for United. I don't really think he's done particularly that well compared to maybe other centre halves, especially this season, in my opinion. I think he does get a lot of minutes. He doesn't always start. I know United do like to rotate the squad in terms of the defence sometimes, especially the centre halves. And I think when I see him next to Maguire, like, I know Maguire isn't always someone that gets a lot of praise. He does get a bit of stick, but I think through this season, I don't think Maguire's done that bad. And I think Lenny Yoro, as much as I can say that he can be a good player, I think more it's just because he's working with an experienced defender, he's doing well. I think if he was with like in a centre back partnership with Aidan Heaven, someone who else who's quite young and not as experienced, I think that's where United would struggle in defence, in my opinion. Ibrahim Konate, and this I've kind of thought about for quite a few seasons. I don't get me wrong, he's a good centre back. He's not one of the worst in the Premier League, as we're clearly stating through just the top six. But for me, I think all his success comes from behind how good of a job Virgil van Dijk does. I think if Van Dijk has a good game, Kanate will still get that praise and he'll still get that good rating. But I feel like people kind of just think, well, because Van Dijk had a good game, and let's say Liverpool did keep a clean sheet, it doesn't mean to say Kanate maybe had a great game. And I'll be honest, I have not really paid a lot of attention or watched Liverpool or not, but from what I've seen in comparison with Kanate and Van Dijk, I think Kanate did well when I think Van Dijk was injured for I can't remember which season he was. He was injured basically for the whole season, and Kanate did a good job without Van Dijk. But whenever Van Dijk is in the squad and he presents so much success for Liverpool, I just don't think Kanate is really that good. To be honest,
I think I understand in terms of you going off more performances, especially this season, because obviously with Kirkes and then you've got Canate, they have struggled for certain games this season where it's
yeah.
been evident that he's not the player that's kind of maybe he's overrated a little bit by most people. But I do think that more recently he's been performing quite well. And when I tell you my two centre backs, I think there were better options to kind of jig about maybe the players that you've chosen. But we'll end with your left back, and then I'll get into my back line.
All right, so my left back, I have gone with Ian Matson, and
Yeah, I
my
looked at him. I looked
yeah,
at him.
I
He was
just
one that I was on the line with.
yeah, I just think, especially this season, I think he's been rather underwhelming. I was like, when you look at Villa, and they've got like some great options at left back. Obviously, you've got Matson as well as Luca Dean. Like those players can rotate. And Matson's one of them players who's really looked like he's going to be someone that's got plenty of future potential, could really be a good performer, especially in the Premier League. But he's really, I think if he does get credit, he really must be an overrated player at Villa because I just don't think he's really done a good enough job, especially when I look at like this season in particular. He's not really shown to be an effective player for Villa. I don't think like comparing like Gusto for instance. I don't think he's even been that great attacking. I can say Gusto's at least done something like bringing Chelsea something on the attack, but I don't feel the same way with Matson. And defensively wise, especially recently when Liverpool, Villa's form's gone a bit downhill. I just don't think he's really proved to be. I mean, I'd honestly take Luca Dean over Matson. I
No,
don't rate
yeah.
Matson. Just seems alright,
I don't
really.
mind it. I don't mind it at all. He came in for £50 million, which was a big price tag after he had a good spell at Dortmund and then Chelsea sold him. And like you said, I think more he's very good going forward and technically on the ball, but his defensive kind of problems, once again, similar to what you said about Gusto, is really what lets him down. And I think he has been heavily rotated and eased into this team by Unai Emery, and he has been probably one of their weaker links in the team.
Yeah,
So I don't think it's a bad shout. I think Konate for me and and Yoro could be something that is questioned. So we'll go into mine. So in goal, I've gone for Bayindir because notoriously he was brought in um, on rotation when Onana was struggling at United. It was proven under Amarin that he was just as bad. He was probably worse than Onana, didn't solve their problems as kind of that intermediary bit before they got a new goalkeeper. Obviously, they've since gone and got Lamens, and he hasn't played at all. So for me, although he's more of a backup keeper anyway, I just think he is probably one of the worst keepers to choose from. That's why I think, as bad as Bob Sanchez is, he's at least the starting keeper, and I think he's been doing well this season. Um, right back's my controversial one, and the reasoning for this is purely he's not been playing, and he's always injury. He's always injured, and for me, in terms of how I interpret the question, worst, I want a player that's always playing for me, that's kind of always fit. Ben White is the player that I put at right back. Now, Ben White is by no means in this selection the worst right back. Malo Gusto is worse than Ben White. Kusanov is probably worse than Ben White in terms of maybe even Nunes. Obviously, City is worse than Ben White. They're the ones I was looking at. However, Ben White's played 7 games this season, was injured for a lot of last season, and has become just a player in the shadows of Jurrien Timber. So that's my reasoning. At centre backs, you had to pick one of these two. And I know I'm a Chelsea fan. I've gone for Adrabayo and I've gone for Badiashile
I thought you'd
because
go Badiashile.
there's no way on earth you're telling me that Konate and Yoro are better than these two, right? I have never seen a combination of centre backs worse in terms of the top six. Like me and Ben were going through all the defenders who are worse than Adrabayo, and there's not many that are worse than him. Like Shile, whenever he gets brought in, I know that he's more of a rotation centre back and that he doesn't play as our starting kind of centre back. However, I'm always fearful. I'm always worried. There's always an injury. There's always a mistake in him. Adrabayo is similar in that I'd bring it back to the Sunderland goal that I remember that haunts me to this day, where Brian Brobby pinned him, waited 7 years, and then just laid it off to Talby for him to tap it in when we lost 2-1 earlier in the season. I've never seen anything like it. I just think it's chaotic. They're both chaotic defenders. And I think, especially that we got Adrabayo on a free, we didn't need him in the first place. He wasn't a player that was going to elevate our defence. And then left back, it is harsh. And I think Matson is a better choice. But I've gone for Nathan Ake. Now, the reason I've gone for Nathan
Okay.
Ake is that I've watched him in some games this season when he's kind of deputised at left back. And I thought he's looked so different to the player that I held in high regard in the past. I just think he's off the boil. He doesn't play that much nowadays, and it might be that it's a lack of momentum and fitness, and maybe he's not getting those minutes where he can build some kind of credibility in the squad. But I've gone with Ake because the other one that was in my head, and that would have been very harsh, was Miles Lewis Skelly on the basis that he's not played anywhere near as much as he did last season. But in the end, I went with Ake. I think Matson's a better choice, but definitely. But I have gone with Ake just because I think I've seen him this season and thought he's not on it. He's a little bit kind of off the boil.
Yeah,
So yeah, go
I
on.
was just going to say with definitely with the centre backs. I can agree. I definitely went for more controversial takes, but the centre halves I can definitely agree with. The goalkeeper, I'll be honest, I can't believe I actually missed out by India, but I think that was mainly because I was trying to find a keeper I think that probably had played
No,
well, was
that's fair.
kind of someone that played like I guess regular football. But yeah, you're not wrong. When he literally came into United to try and be Onana's replacement, he was shocking, and United did the right thing to bring in Lemons, who's clearly done a far more impressive job. I mean,
No, definitely.
hence why they're in Champions League positions. But
We'll move on to it. We'll run out of time a little bit. So we'll go to what formation have you gone for?
so I've gone with just like a 4-3-3.
Okay, so do you want to? You've got three midfielders, yeah?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So talk me through three midfielders, and then we'll go with your attackers. I've gone for like a 4-4-2, basically, is what I've gone for. So yeah, we'll go through your three midfielders,
Okay.
quick fire.
Okay, right. So this midfield three, I think, is going to be very controversial. So one of my centre mids I've got as Curtis Jones, which is probably not the most controversial one, I would say. I think compared to other Liverpool midfielders, like McAllister, for instance, is, in my opinion, is just a far better player. I know Szoboszlai isn't always someone that plays centre mid, he'll sometimes play at full back, but I think Curtis Jones, I think he gets so much praise for being of like just kind of like a local player from the academy. But for me personally, I don't think he's someone that's really performed that well. He didn't do too bad last season, but I think this season it's really struck out that I don't think he's going to be someone that will last at Liverpool. He's going to be someone that will eventually leave, and I don't see him joining like a big six club or someone that's going to finish in the top six anytime soon. I just don't rate him personally. This is more based on this season. I've picked Phil Foden,
Right, can
and
I say I had him on my list originally because, as you've said, if you base it on this season and maybe more because of how good he has been in the past, the expectation that you have with him, I can see your reasoning for it. It's going to
yeah.
be a take on when we put out these visuals of the worst 11 and his name's there. But no, explain it. Go on.
So from what I looked in terms of, for instance, like goal involvements, I think he's like, I don't know if it's like 6 goals, 5 assists, something. I'm not sure, but he got the majority of those from the end of November to, I would say, the middle slash end of December.
He's
Apart
been
from that,
dropped, really.
yeah, yeah. Apart from that, he's not shown anything. I mean, I know he can be great on the ball. He sometimes can be great when he's with his passing and everything, but compared to other seasons, we've seen how good Foden is. This season, it's been very underwhelming. Like as we said, the expectations are going to constantly be high for Foden to keep on performing just as well as he's done in the previous seasons. And this season, I don't think he's done that great, and that's why I've put him in there. And I've also got another Manchester City central midfielder, Bernardo Silva, which this one,
Very attacking midfield, by the way.
yeah, it is. It is. I
But
think
go
that's
on, go on.
always with the thing I have with these blooming 11s is they're always attacking midfielders. But with Bernardo Silva, I always liked him as a winger. And when he got changed as a central midfielder, it took me a while to maybe think, like, is he really good at adapting as to a central midfielder? Because obviously on the attack he can be great. Defensively, on a few occasions he's not too bad, but I don't really rate him when when it comes to his defensive work. I mean, you've seen he's given a lot of fouls away when really you can just see he's struggling to tackle. Because he's quite small, he's not really the most physical player. For me, he's just not someone that suits that position. I'm not saying he's been bad in previous seasons, but I think this season he
Yeah.
could be better. Is just what I think.
Okay. I think Bernardo Silva's a howler, if I'm honest. Just because I know that you're saying you personally don't rate him, which is fair enough. But in terms of his consistency, I do think, if anything, he's underrated with just how integral he is to that City team because there are more flair players and because there are more kind of players that seem better. Like I think he does go under the radar a little bit, but although
Mm.
he might not be having his best season maybe across his City tenure, I don't think by far he's probably one of the worst. I'll go with mine now. We can compare. So I'll do. In fact, what I'll do is I'll leave my strikers. So
Right.
I'll go with my wingers as well, and then you've got your last three.
Yeah.
So I've gone for Savinho at right wing. Reason for this is there's a City fan that I work with who waxes lyricals about how bad he is. All he ever says is that he obviously watches City on a consistent basis, and he says that he's just one of these that has no end product. He's a little bit kind of one of them that loses the ball quite a lot, tries to do skill sometimes, it doesn't pay off. He had a brilliant game against Newcastle in the FA Cup, but I think that that was a one-off from what I've heard from him. So I've gone for Savinho. I think Leon Bailey was on my mind just because he's maybe one of the weaker links in terms of there's a lot of good wingers from these top six, but I went with Savinho. Left wing has to be Gittins for me because Gittins came in for something like 50, 60 million pounds. He's played 25 times, has 1 assist in the Premier League, I think. He scored an amazing goal in the AFL Cup against Wolves. But other than that, he's not even come off the bench recently in many of the games. He's a shadow of kind of the prospect that I saw at Dortmund that got double figures of goals and assists last season. I know he's only 20, but he has done nothing whatsoever to kind of explain his price tag. He hasn't even shown a glimpse, if I'm honest, Garnacho, who I'm always a critic of, has been the better player of the two that have come in. And yeah, Gittins has to be as one of probably the worst signings this season. Never mind, kind of in one of the worst 11s for the top six. And then my two midfielders are you have to have Ugarte, I feel. Ugarte at United
Right.
has been completely dropped, especially since Michael Carrick came in. He's played 17 games, 11 starts. He's been completely kind of just exiled since kind of they realised that he's really just a poor midfielder. He came in for big money, 50 million from PSG last season, was poor last season, and obviously since they've rearranged this midfield where it was a problem for them, and they've brought in Mino and Casemiro under Carrick, it's gone much better. But yeah, Ugarte for me really is he's just not been the addition that they need, and it shows poor recruitment from United. And then Douglas Luiz, just because of the season that he's had, is my other midfielder. Douglas Luiz, I don't think he's by any means a terrible player, but Villa have gone off the boil ever since, as we said on the last episode, ever since Tielemans and McGinn got injured, he's come in to replace them, and it's all gone wrong for Aston Villa. And then he had a terrible start to the season at Nottingham Forest. So that's my two midfielders. So we'll go on to your front three now. So who are your front three quickly?
Okay, so right wing, you did mention him, Leon Bailey. He's kind of just less credited now as he used to be at Villa. I don't think he's just someone that performs as well now as he used to do. He's really, it's just become a bit more disappointing, really. I don't think he's become as much of an impactful winger for Villa as he has in the past. Left winger, you said Gittins. I've gone with Garnacho. The reason why I do go with Garnacho though is even when he played for both United and Chelsea, he's really like he occasionally does get some goal involvements, but for me personally, just in general as a player, I don't really think he's that good. One thing I've noticed this season, particularly with Chelsea, is that the striving games he has are the cup games because he did well against Charlton, he did well against Hull, he did well against Wrexham. All three of them games are against Championship teams, whereas compared to Prem teams, I just simply don't think he performs as well. Not saying he belongs in the Championship, but you know, up your standard, Garnacho. And then up front, I was very close for going for Ollie Watkins based off this season, but I end up going for Joshua Zirkzee because I just think both this season, last season, I think this season he's not had a lot of game time, especially when he was under Amarim through this season. He's been given a bit more of a chance on an occasion, but he's just not a very impressive striker. I think United tried to get him in terms of really improve the attack. If anything, he made the attack worse, especially last season from where they finished in the Prem. So
No,
yeah,
that's not
what I went with.
that's definitely a fair shot. I've also got Xerxes. Yeah, I went with Joshua Xerxes because this season they've basically just outright replaced him with obviously Seshko and Cunha and Embuemo. And I think that he hasn't really got a future at the club. I think he does desperately need to leave. There was links with him leaving in January. He came in for not relatively quite a small fee, I suppose, in the kind of grand scheme of like football fees nowadays. However, he's got I think two goals in the Prem this season, and he's barely played, especially after January. And then a controversial one, but more my interpretation of the question with worst. Again, as I said with Ben White, it's more this guy came in for a club record fee. Or no, actually, Florian Wirtz was the club record. No, Isak did become a club record fee, I think. But he came in for a lot of money. He's not scored, I don't think, in the Premier League yet. And he's been injured for the majority of the season. I know that's unfortunate, and he's got, I think, an ACL. However, the player that we know he is, and the technical ability that everyone's seen, and the fact that he was linked a season ago, 2 seasons ago, up there with Haaland as probably better than Haaland, potentially, some people were saying. I think this season's been catastrophic for him. And on that pure basis that it's not gone well for him in his first season at Liverpool, I have gone for Alexander Isak because up front with Joshua Zirkzee. Liam Delap is probably someone that is admitted by me, but probably easily could get in there ahead of Isak. I think that it maybe is harsh on Isak, but I've gone with it more just to be a little bit controversial. So yeah, I've gone with Alexander Isak. I think both 11s, if I'm honest, have got things you can pick out of it that definitely will get scrutinised.
Yeah,
I think your Bernardo Silva claim and probably Canate are probably quite bad. My Ben White one
oh,
and probably
thanks.
Isaac for most people are probably something that are questioned. But that's been a great little kind of topical debate. We'll move on now to the quiz. So this week, welcome back to the Hoof podcast, and we're going to be going straight into the quiz now. We've got the Champions League quarterfinals obviously happening as we speak. We had yesterday the likes of obviously Barca and Newcastle, Galatasaray, Liverpool, and tonight we've got the likes of Chelsea, PSG, as I mentioned earlier in the pod. I want you to give me, Charlie, the PSG versus Chelsea lineup that was 2016. March 2016, it was 2-1 to PSG, and I want you to give me the lineup.
Wait, the
So,
PSG or the Chelsea lineup? Sorry,
sorry, the PSG lineup.
PSG lineup.
I don't think it's that difficult. I'd expect you to get about seven or six. It's the PSG lineup from 2016.
God, okay. There's a few players I can definitely remember who would have been in the squad at the time. Uh, oh no, hold on a minute. There's one particular player who I'm not going to mention, but I'm sure he did was. Oh, hold on a minute. Was David Luiz at Arsenal at the time, or was he at PSG? Or was he at Chelsea?
I'll run through the Chelsea lineup because there's some great. I would nearly choose in the Chelsea lineup. We had Courtois in net. We've got Spiliqueta, Gary Cahill, Ivanovic, and then shout out to this guy, Kennedy at left back in a quarterfinals of the Champions League. We then had John Obi Mikel, Cesc Fabregas, Pedro Rodriguez, Willian Hazard, and Diego Costa, who did get a goal. It was Gus Hiddink who was the manager. It was the season when Mourinho got sacked because he had the debacle with the club doctor, and he ended up getting sacked.
What was the formation for Paris Saint-Germain?
It was just a
Yeah.
4-3-3.
4-3-3. Well, that don't really work though if those players are in there. Oh, I'll
They've
just
only got one of them. They've only got one of the top strikers, Charlie.
okay, all right.
I'm gonna have to press you. How many have you got?
I've got seven. I've got three more. I'm basically done. There's three more players I'm just gonna put down, and I'm basically done. Yeah, I'm just gonna hope all of these were playing at the time.
Okay, go for it.
Okay, so in goal, I've got someone called Trapp, who I think
Yeah.
was German.
Okay.
Defense, I've gone with like Thiago Silva and Marquinhos as centre halves, but then I've also got David Luiz in there and someone called Kazawa, I think he's called. And then I only have two midfielders, so I just went with Thiago Motta and Matuidi. And then as a front three, we've got Lucas Moura, Angel Di Maria, and I think Zlatan Ibrahimovic.
You know what, Charlie? You smashed it. You got nine.
Woo.
You've absolutely smashed it. It was Kevin Trapp. It was Mark. What you've done well is Marquinhos played right back with David Luiz and Thiago Silva centre backs. So
He
you've got
played
all
it right.
three. It was Maxwell who you didn't get a left back. The only midfielder that you missed was it was Rabiot in midfield alongside Motta and Matuidi. And then you literally got the front three of Moura, Ibrahimovic, and Angel Di Maria. It was Edison Cavani on the bench who did come on because obviously he's another big name at the
Yeah, it
time.
was either him or Ibra.
All right, we'll run through the questions for the rest of the quiz quickly then. So, question number two, you're on nine, which is probably one of the highest we've ever got from the lineups. AC Milan beat Inter 1-0, courtesy of a Pervis Eustepinian goal, which closed the gap to 7 points at the top of Serie A. When was the last time the Rossoneri, so AC Milan, did the double over Inter? Was it 2010 to 11, 15 to 16, 17 to 18, or 22 to 23?
When was the last time they did the double? I feel like this must have been I feel like this must have been a while. I'm going to
Go for
say
quick fire answers.
2010 to 11.
That's correct. So we're up to 10. Arsenal became the first ever side to start a game with two players aged 16 or under when they played Mansfield Town in the fifth round of the FA Cup. Can you name either player? So a point for each player. The two youngsters who were under 16 who started the final. Started the quarterfinal. Not the
Um,
quarterfinal, the fifth round.
no, I actually can't because I think that's one of the only FA Cup games that I didn't really pay much attention to.
Okay. You should have got Max Dowman, but
Oh, for
Marley
God's
Salmon Yeah, Marley Salmon is the other one, so that's a bit of a stinker. Cruzeiro won the Campeonato Mineiro final on Sunday, which is the Brazilian Cup. And there was a record number of red cards shown after a mass brawl. I think many people have seen it. How many red cards were given out? 21, 23, 24, or 20?
Oh, I've seen this on a flipping. I've seen this on Instagram, and
In
I've counted
everywhere.
them myself, but I
Punk,
forgot. Is it
punks
20?
been flying in.
Is it 23?
Correct. So you're up to 10. What you on? No, you're on 11 now. The final question. Since Brentford were promoted in 21-22, can you name the top three scorers who have got the most goals against Brentford? So since they were promoted, can you give me the top three scorers, all joint on 7 goals, that have the most goals against Brentford? A point
Most.
for each. So you could get a record kind of high score here. A point for each player.
Okay, right. So
So we'll just go for a quick fire first three that come into your head.
I'm gonna go with Erling Haaland.
Okay.
I'm gonna very random. I'm gonna go with Callum Wilson, and I'm hoping he scored a lot for Brentford before I went to Bayern. I'm gonna
Clue.
say Harry
The
Kane.
clue. Okay. I was going to say the clue is that one of them played against them in the FA Cup on Monday.
Of course.
So it's none of them correct. It was Jared Bowen who got 2 against them in the quarterfinals, obviously on Monday. It was Phil Foden and it was Mohamed Salah. So they were the three. So that's the end of the quiz. You have ended on 11, which is probably one of the highest scores, the highest probably we've had in the lineups for a long time. And although we've rushed through the quiz there, we have got through to the end of the episode. So thank you very much for for listening, sorry. And obviously make sure to follow us on all socials. We will be changing the times from now on of when we're going to release the podcast and the recording dates. It's going to be a Sunday from now on and probably released on a Monday. So stay tuned and obviously look out for any kind of news that we tell you about that. But thank you very much, Charlie, for a great episode. And obviously, keep scrutinizing us in the comments when you see our lineups go live on TikTok in a couple of days' time. Thank you very much.